Welcome back to the Ball and Breakfast Podcast, everyone. I'm Patrick Miller, alongside Wayne Pua, bringing you another episode here. We have special guest Charles Wong, representing the restaurant Umamicue. We will be talking to him about how he got this restaurant started, his roots in Chicago. He's a big sports fan, just like us. We're going to go through all of it. I'm going to kick it over to Wayne to, set Charles up and give us some background on, how he knows him and, how this conversation came to be.
Yeah. So first off, Charles is a good friend of mine, but, I met him in college. We were all part of the same business fraternity at DePaul. And, I remember, I think one of the first times I met him, he like took me under his wing a little bit, showed me the ropes, and I was like, oh, this guy's really cool. And then, eventually, I moved to Seattle and did my whole thing there. But then I remember he was like one of the first people I feel like I contacted, because I know he loves food and he also loves the White Sox. And, so he's always been kind of a good friend there for me. So, and I guess I just also wanted to figure out more of his journey and everything. So, with all that, I think, Charles, tell us more about Umamicue, what's it all about, and kind of like, how did you get started and all that?
Yeah, sure. So first, we aren't a restaurant yet. Not sure where we're going to take that. But we started out just doing catering for friends and family. We went to Austin, Texas, and visited Franklin Barbecue. Had just an, out-of-body experience with brisket. And I was like, oh, I want to try to see if we could do this in Chicago. So came back and bought just a cheap Traeger pellet grill from Costco. So it wasn't even like the Traeger brand. It was like a Traeger Costco brand. So it's like super thin walls. So it's just not like the Traeger quality. So started doing that, started making brisket. It was horrible, but just kept doing it and getting at it. And then, friends and family, they were like, you should open up a catering company or something like that. People always say that when you make decent food or, food that's edible at a party, if they're your friends or family, they're always going to tell you, hey, you should start a restaurant. So eventually, I was still doing finance. That's where I got my degree at DePaul, and worked for, 15 years or so. Did the catering on the side. So the first catering gig that we ever did was for a 450 person party. It was a holiday party. Someone just contacted me out of the blue. And, I was like, sure, yeah, I can do that. And I just thought it was like one of my friends they were just pranking me, so I was like, yeah, sure, I can do it. I just sent an email back to them like, yeah, whatever you need for this 450 person party, we'll do. And then they replied back like, yeah, send us a proposal. And I was like, oh shit, okay, so this is not like a prank. And then one thing led to another, and we were able to do a full service catering for a bank. So we did it for a couple of years before the regime changed a little bit. And the owner of the bank is no longer the owner of the bank. So we'll just kind of leave it at that. And so my love for barbecue just kept growing. Went back down to Austin a few times, tried some different places. And then in 2019, I was just really kind of sick of doing the finance game. I was really burnt out. I was putting in long hours. I didn't really see it going anywhere. And so kind of made a decision. I was like, we're going to go ahead and do this and quit my job, try to do it full time. Broke my collarbone a week before I quit. Then I was on a one wheel. It was very, very stupid. And recovered from that. Then February 19th, 2020, did a first pop-up at Perilla, which was our first pop-up this year. It went really well. I was going to open up brick and mortar, and then, a month later, something happened. I don't know, just stuff shut down for a bit, some disease or some flu. And so kind of
depending on who you ask, right?
right. Depending on who you ask.
Sorry.
So during the pandemic, kind of had to pivot into doing meal prep for people on special diets, vegan, plant-based, keto, paleo. So kind of did that whole delivery service just to keep things afloat before when things opened up again. Then went back down to Texas to stage at Leroy and Lewis for a weekend. Really kind of opened my eyes in terms of new school barbecue and what we do with kind of things that I grew up eating, but then also incorporating like Texas style, in terms of like the technique. So like low and slow with the brisket, salt and pepper, well, which is now like Lowry's and pepper. So it's like the Texas secret. So really try to meld those two things together. And so far it's been awesome. It's been an extremely busy year for us. And, we look forward to keep putting the pedal to the metal for next year. So
cool. How did you, because I know you do things like with brisket banh right? Like that, like to me, it's like, that's definitely like a fusion type of concept that, maybe not too many people are familiar. Like, well, how did you get that inspiration of incorporating, Texas style brisket with banh which I think we've discussed our love of banh on this podcast before. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, during this process too, during the food process, I was trying to think about ways that the food would be approachable. So we're Chinese Vietnamese. My parents were born in Vietnam, but we're Chinese. I was born and raised here in Chicago. And so one of the things I thought of was something that it's like, hey, is it, banh mi is pretty universal. A lot of people know what it is, but also there's a fair share of people who don't know what it is. So every event that we do, there's always someone that comes up and be like, hey, I want to try that banh mi, it's called. And then so you kind of explain to them what it is. But every culture has barbecue, has something smoked. So like this would work out perfectly. So I'm like, yeah, let's do brisket, let's do pork belly, and made our own barbecue sauce. And we wanted something that's portable for people, especially if we're doing pop-ups at breweries where you don't have to get super messy. You can still enjoy your beer in one hand and the sandwich in the other hand.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I definitely appreciate it. It's like a nice, I guess, fusion, but then it's also, food is definitely a good connector, I think, to cultures and to people. And I think that's like a good, like, kind of like Korean tacos, right? Like, I feel like it's a good combination that incorporates something familiar with something, maybe your average person isn't too familiar with, right? So, yeah, curious. Yeah, how did you get involved then with like the pop-up scene? Like, did you have connections to, brewers and like other caterers? Like, how did you get involved in that? And just like, what is the process like that for people that maybe want to start like a restaurant pop-up? Like, what is the process like that?
So for us, it was a little bit different where I knew a couple people so I know the guys at Perilla really well, but we just had a conversation with people who are in charge of the restaurant. And but if you're starting out and you don't really know that many people in the restaurant industry, if you come from a different background, the best way to get started is through social media, is to finding places that do have rotating chefs that pop up. So the first place that kind of went to was the Kedzie Inn with the Chicago Reader and Mike Sula. They do a rotating chef every Monday. They call it the Monday Night Food Ball. So I went there to check it out. I had no idea it existed, but when I was getting ready, trying to really ramp up the Instagram stories and posts and things like that, I started looking to see all the food influencers, where are they going, or any unique posts that I see. And so we landed on the food ball, and I was like, I'm gonna go try it. And then once you're there, you just have to network. I think with any type of industry that you're in. So I networked with a few people, talked to Mike Sula. I invited him out to a different pop-up that we were doing at Empirical Brewery, which no longer exists, RIP. And he came by, tried some brisket, loved it, and said, let's get you for a food ball. And so from there, you kind of start building your reputation. Like people will see you at the food ball, other chefs who want to do the food ball or are part of the industry. You talk to them, and then you kind of build relationships with people. And I'm all about doing collaborations, so started doing some collaborations with different chefs, and kind of just built the awareness like that. And so it's a long process, I would say. It's a lot of long hours, a lot of interesting. You got to make a lot of mistakes along the way, and don't beat yourself up for that. Just keep going. As long as you have someone, I would say that, like, to be successful, you don't want to just feed your family and friends, because they're always going to tell you that things are great. So if I were to get in the food industry, well, if I wanted to just have people tell me my food is great, then I would never sell it to anybody. I would just serve it to my family and friends and then call it a day. So, but we're crazy people, so we decided to kind of take the plunge and be vulnerable and all that good stuff.
Yeah. No, I've had your food on a number of times. I had it before you were cool too, so I will claim that. It definitely has improved. Definitely helps that your equipment has improved too. So yeah. But no, it's interesting. I've always been, kind of seeing you from afar from the gram or Facebook whenever, and kind of admired that transition I think you made. But yeah, so like you went from a career in finance, and then you went barbecue. It sounded like, yeah, you wanted something different. You didn't like the direction you were going at. Curious, yeah, like, what was the biggest change, like lifestyle wise, for yourself with regards to all that? Because I do know, yeah, the restaurant industry, yeah, you work a lot of hours and everything, and meanwhile, it's like I'm here, like, oh, I got to do reports until 7 o'clock, but I'm like on the same chair working from home or something like that. Like, yeah, like what's been the biggest change or difference for you?
The biggest change for me is, like, it's hard to procrastinate. I'm the biggest procrastinator. And so kind of going from, like if you had a report due, you'd be like, oh, okay, I didn't get it done today, I can get it done tomorrow. But with a pop-up setting or any catering event you're doing, like, that's the, like, drop dead deadline. You can't miss that deadline. So it really prepares you to be as organized as possible. And if you could do something today versus tomorrow, you definitely want to do it today. So that's kind of been a big change in terms of how I go about my day. And then second is that, like, there's no boss that's gonna, breathe down my neck and tell me I'm doing something wrong or whatever the case may be. It's, you just kind of eat what you kill. And so, you can work as much as you want or not as much as you want, but I know that if you don't work as much, then, it's not going to be sustainable. And so we're trying to find some sustainability here too. So.
Got it. And then, yeah, you talked about like a potential future brick and mortar. Like, is that something that you're really gunning for, or are you kind of like, you're kind of where you're at right now, but, maybe, somewhere down the line, it is something you want to be doing?
Yeah, it's still kind of not sure yet. Sometimes, I get the itch when I'm doing events for a few days, or I have a residency for a week, and I'm like, oh, this is great, but I think COVID changed the restaurant landscape, the service industry as a whole. More importantly, it also, bred a lot of micro makers, we call it. So I'd be considered a micro maker. All the people that do pop-ups that don't have a physical brick and mortar, like, they're considered micro makers. Since the service industry has changed because of COVID, you're always looking at different ways that, maybe I don't have to have a brick and mortar and rely on people to come to my restaurant, because if there's a COVID 2022 or something like that, like, you're kind of screwed, So trying to find different ways to be able to make money, but not really have to have such a large investment and such a large commitment in terms of renting things out and, having a lease. So With that said, I'm thinking about, we've done a lot of collaborations. We're trying to build our social media followers. And so an idea that I have is we're going to start a YouTube channel. We're going to do some collaborations and just get people aware of what we're doing. Maybe we'll throw some recipes out there of what we're making and be like, hey, you know what? If you like what you saw here on this channel or on this video, then, we're going to be popping up at Big Isle Brewery or something like that in 2 weeks. So if you want to try whatever we made, like, feel free to come by. We'll be there. We'll be serving food there. So
that sounds cool.
That's kind of just, this is a different way of thinking about things. It's just, it's a lot of things to open up a restaurant, and because then you start relying on other people, and like, people are great, but also people aren't going to take care of things the way that you would because you're the owner. And so trying to find consistent, great help is very difficult too.
I had a friend who started a food truck, and I remember this is pre-pandemic. So were you saying that at the time of the pandemic, they kind of loosened up some of the laws around Chicago where you didn't have to, have a place, brick and mortar, just to at least have a kitchen there? And I guess with that, is there any sort of like friction you see in the industry between those that are like, sucked into a lease versus those that are micro making, kind of disrupting the industry in that space?
Yeah, not necessarily. I would say that if you look at it pre-pandemic, the food truck scene in itself was very difficult because there's so many rules that you have to follow. And I'm not sure if they loosened up the food truck rules, to be honest with you. All I know is that, like, space is very limited. You have to have a 24/7 GPS on your truck at all times. You can't stay at a place for more than 2 hours, even if it's a private event. So there are a lot of things working against you. And then your investment is going to be like 50 grand just to get a truck up and running. So with gas and everything like that, it's like, it's 2 times harder from what I heard from people who have food trucks and who have brick and mortars. So I don't see food trucks out as much anymore. Of course, I'm not like downtown in the thick of it on Wacker Drive. But I do know that they did open up their first like food truck parking lot somewhere here in was it Logan or Wicker Park or somewhere like that. So I think people are starting to embrace, the micro makers, and as well as you should. Like, there's no one that's gonna, if you're a restaurant, there's no one that's going to, I think, take you down if you're just doing a food truck, or you're, the pie is big enough. Everybody has to eat every single day, so whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, there's always a niche that you can get after, and there's always mouths to feed. So you can't make enough food for people. So that's my belief, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I eat 3 times a day. So sometimes, well, actually oftentimes more. So
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, well, I assume you do. Like, you got to test the goods sometimes, right? So
Gotta test the goods.
Yeah. But no, I was gonna say, it was interesting you're talking about YouTube, because it definitely has changed. I feel like, it's become the place where like content creators, like, people are gonna go towards a brand or content creator before they even try like something like Mr. Beast, right? Like, he's has his own burger place, and it's like, you don't think of him initially as somebody that sells burgers or whatever, but then I think he does like 100 million in revenue now, and he operates ghost kitchens or something like that mainly. So big
thing in food is you don't have to be delicious, you just have to be consistent. So if you're consistently horrible, people still go to you. They know that they're getting something horrible. You still make money, right? But if I'm great one day and I'm horrible the next day, people are like, what the hell? What are you? Are you great or are you horrible? So just being consistent. Like, so every catering event I go to after I'm done, like, I go to McDonald's, people are like, oh, McDonald's isn't real food. I mean, there's sustenance there, but I always order something from it because I just like the consistency factor of it. Like, I know what I'm getting, so.
Yeah. What are your favorite restaurants in Chicago? And I know that you have allies, but I definitely don't want you to segregate them. But what are your personal, like, hey, I just got done with a shift. I need some grub. Where are your places that you go to?
Oh, well, I would absolutely go to Perilla for sure. When we did our first pop-up there, it went really well. And then they took us They're like, once you're done cleaning up, we have some food for you. And they just served us a really, really awesome dinner. And those guys do just amazing things. Their flavors are dynamic, and their service is great. So always up for that. So that's more of like a sit down dinner. But what would I do in terms of if I want something quick? I'd go to D'Amato's and get a sandwich. Get some of their meatball sandwich, meatball sub, or things like that. Their pizza is great. So yeah, something fast would be D'Amato's. Yeah, it's a tough one, man. After being in the industry, it's hard to, my job is part professional eater, because you have to try new things to see, just to expand and develop your palate. But at the same time, like, you're very cost conscious too, right? You're like, well, I have to, briskets, what, $4, prime briskets, $4, $4.10 a pound. I was paying upwards to $6 a pound at once. And you lose like 50% of your trim, and you're looking at like $12 per pound as your cost. How much are you going to charge the customer? It has to be above $30 a pound. So yeah, things are super expensive right now. And I don't know if it'll ever, at least for the foreseeable future, go down to pre-pandemic prices. I don't know, pre-war. I don't know. It's kind of a very it's been like day, I think, for when COVID happened. It's just like, I just feel like yesterday I was wearing masks, and now I don't have to. Do I wear masks? Do I not wear masks? Whatever. I just follow the rules, So
yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I mean, moving on to, I guess, your Chicago connection with I know, like, the White Sox, right, and everything. I know you're a North Sider. Pat is also North Sider, but you're a White Sox fan. Explain to me this, and how did this all come about? I know Pat's story, but I want to hear your story.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, grew up in the heyday with Frank Thomas, One Dog, Robin Ventura. So they were like the best Chicago team. Both my parents worked, so they weren't able to like take me to ball games and things like that. But my aunt was, she's just like a fair weather fan. So she took me to the Sox stadium instead of the Cubs, and then that's how I became a White Sox fan. So if the Cubs are good, then I'd probably be a Cubs fan. But it's hard to kind of fathom that. I didn't even like Wrigley, to be honest with you. I thought it was just super dirty and pre-Ricketts, obviously. And I was like, man, Comiskey's where it's at, or guaranteed rate or whatever the hell it's called nowadays. But
yeah. Because I know you're a couple years older than me, so it's like, Frank Thomas, Robin Ventura, Ray Durham, right? Like, I feel like
Ray Durham.
Yeah. Do you got a favorite player, for White Sox player of all time?
Favorite White Sox player? Ooh. I mean, it'd have to be Frank Thomas. I know he didn't have like a graceful exit from the Sox, or was really liked by his teammates, but man, he is an outstanding hitter, and it was kind of sad to see that he wasn't like a huge part of the World Series team. I think he got injured during that time, and he couldn't play in the playoffs. So, but just seeing him in the middle of the lineup, over 100 walks in the season, and just batting over 300. I mean, he's just a big dude, and I don't think he did steroids. So he was awesome. So that's probably my favorite. My second would be Joe Crede. I think he had like great potential. His back obviously hurt him, but he could have been an MVP type of player. I think if he would have stayed healthy and kept with the organization. So
yeah, he was clutch. I think his defensive plays during the World Series they were just nuts. Like that was such a run.
Yeah. Alexei Ramirez, great too. Cuban Missile.
Yeah, Alexei.
Alexei.
I actually shouted out to Alexei Ramirez in Viagra Triangle. He was taking a left-hand turn. I think he had either a Chrysler 300 or a really nice, Rolls Royce or something. But he's taking this left-hand turn. I just looked over and I saw him and I just yelled, "Alexei!" And he just like put a hand up and like drove away. So I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." But
that's great. You didn't cause a crash or anything like that.
I guess not. I think I caught him by surprise. So at least gave me like a nod, But other than that, I think he was cruising.
I mean, could you imagine that? Like, oh yeah, Alexei's on the 15-day DL or whatever. Oh, he got a little whiplash because he said hi to some, some prick or whatever on Viagra Triangle.
Oh man.
Yeah, I ran into Josh Beckett in the Viagra Triangle. This was years ago, obviously, but he was actually playing for the Red Sox, and it was like pouring rain. I forgot where we were, but I was like, he was in like a party bus. It was just a huge party bus. They had so many lights in there, a couple stripper poles or whatnot. So he was out waiting for it. And I was like, Josh Beckett? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh man, I'm a huge fan. I remember, when you were with the Marlins and you came back and you just, destroyed the Cubs. That was one of my favorite moments. And he just kind of chuckled, laughed, and then like he just left. But he actually was scheduled to start that couple days or whatever the next day, but he was a scratch against the Cubs actually. So it was interleague play. And I was like, oh, he probably partied too much or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he did have a little bit of a reputation, I think, during that time. So I guess it makes sense. No, for sure. I had a friend. This isn't my story. There was a boss I had talked about Jerry Sloan. There was like a bartender that somebody asked him. One of my friends asked a bartender that he was good friends with to do some things to Jerry Sloan, basically get him fucked up essentially. And so that occurred. And then I think it was like the next day, I think this was like during the playoffs or something like that with the Bulls, when he was the Utah Jazz. And I think they lost the next day or something like that. So again, I don't know if it's true or not, but yeah, in the end, people are people, and all the sports people we talk to, they get crazy too, right? So no, it all makes sense.
Yeah. I have another story. I went down to Nashville, and I was at a bar. It was by Vanderbilt, and I saw this like huge dude there, and I'm like, that looks like Albert Hainsworth. So I went up to the guy. I was like, "Hey, are you Hainsworth?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Man, I remember this is when he was playing for the Redskins. I remember when he was it was Jay Cutler's time, and he pushed one of our offensive linemen and sacked Jay Cutler just by pushing the O-line guy. I forget who it was, but So I was like, "Man, I remember that play, man. That's crazy." He's like, "Jay's my friend." I'm like, "Cool." And then I just walked away. I was just like, "That's weird."
Didn't he step on some guy's head or something? I remember he getting serious trouble, with Tennessee or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But I was like, damn, yeah, that was. I was like, man, so strong. He was like, yeah, Jay's my friend. I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah. You go figure, because Jay went to Vandy then, right? And I don't know if Hainsworth did, but maybe they were teammates at one time. Who knows?
Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah. Jay Cutler is actually pretty interesting. I don't know if you listen to. He does have his own podcast too, but even beforehand, he was on ESPN, talking to Tom and Waddle, right? I believe he had a Monday, it was a Monday morning quarterback thing. I listened to that. He seemed like an okay dude, or whatever. But then, his whole demeanor off the field, I feel like, he just looks like he's, he got that smoking Jay thing, right?
Right.
He just has a suspicious look on his face. So.
Yeah, but statistically speaking, he's the best Bears quarterback in history, right?
Yeah,
he holds a lot of the records.
That's all. Hopefully now, right? Yeah.
Hopefully it's different.
Yeah, we'll see. Give Fields 2 more years, and that'll be history too. But I actually saw Jay Cutler. Oh, go ahead.
I just hope that we can protect Fields before he's taking some hits, man.
No doubt. I was going to say, I actually saw Jay Cutler randomly signing autographs in Chicago last weekend. So I was like, man, that just doesn't seem like a Jay Cutler thing. He was at Soldier Field, shaking little kids' hands and stuff. I'm like, man, where was this guy? The entire time he was with our team,
Right, right. He's probably like, "How do you like me now, guys?" You know, after going through the slew of quarterbacks.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
he was also a reality TV star. Like I watched that. He was awesome in there. He was the most hilarious. I mean, I don't watch like trashy reality TV shows, but in this case, I definitely did. And
Mhm.
he really made the show. I think when he was with Kristen Cavallari and that whole thing. So, yeah, like hilarious, like very subtle humor, which is I think my jam. I feel like so. Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, I guess speaking of Bears and everything, like, yeah, who's your Bears player? Who's your favorite Bears player, either all time or current or both?
Ooh, okay. Let's see. Well, everybody likes Fields right now. I would say back in the day, I'd say Matt Forte. Um, he was super steady. I remember like his rookie season, he had this huge run against the Colts. So Forte comes to mind, but I would have to say my favorite is Devin Hester. Um, he was just awesome, electrifying. And if he would have developed more route running, like he would be just a crazy, probably like a modern day Randy Moss, maybe. Just super speedy. I guess he's like a slimmer Tyreek Hill, I guess you would say now. So yeah, Matt Forte and Devin Hester. Those are the two that come to my mind in terms of favorite Bears players.
Mine's Charles Tillman. I'm all about the
Peanut
peanut punch.
punch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then I think he became like an FBI agent too, or CIA or something like that. Like he got all federal or something like that. Yeah,
yeah,
it's an
yeah.
interesting guy. I guess, yeah. And then on top of that, yeah, who's your Bulls favorite Bulls player growing up or what?
I mean, do we count MJ, or do we just put that off? We put that off to the side. Then is that what we should do? Because that should, any Bulls fan would tell you that, right?
I mean,
But
I always like Scottie Pippen, so yeah.
Pippen was great. He did all the things that Jordan couldn't do, or couldn't focus on during the games. But
He was just
I guess
scoring too much, right?
yeah, he was scoring too much.
I'm gonna score 50 points. Whatever you want to do, like just do everything else.
Right. Yeah, and you had Rodman or Ho Grant getting the rebounds, getting the misses. But I would say Derrick Rose is my favorite Bulls player, non-Michael Jordan. So he gets a bad rap at times, I feel like, but I think people are starting to warm up to the idea that, back in the day, now with all this technology and everything, you see guys like Kawhi Leonard who maybe played 6 games this season, and he's really coming back from the Achilles and taking his time. So same thing with Zach LaVine, where he didn't play to back-to-backs, depending on how his knee feels. So they're really starting to take care of the athletes and really looking at them as investments. So I wonder if they did that with Derek, how long his career in his peak form would last. So it's unfortunate that management kind of leaked out that, like, yeah, he can return, in, I forget what was 2013 or something like that. I forget. It's like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
If you think about it, that's like, wow, shit, 10 years ago. But they leaked it, and like his camp and the Bulls camp, and then there was the Adidas camp. They were all like kind of promoting different things, I feel like. So it was definitely some mismanagement. It was unfortunate because he was a great player, represented Chicago.
Yeah, that's where I feel like it makes sense for him to eventually come back, but I don't know, like those scars. I mean, it's new management now a little bit, right? So, but yeah, still maybe some of the same faces. That's like, maybe not. So, but I think Chicago would like definitely want him back. If the timing's right. So
Yeah. I mean, he should. It's one guy that's on top, right? Reinsdorf, that kind of makes the final decision, and so you're like, you can't really think about. I mean, he had success, but it was like kind of catching lightning in a bottle with being able to draft Jordan and then just putting pieces around him, and then finding like Jerry Krause, to his credit, Tony Kukoc, players like that. But they had a lot of misses too, Twin Towers didn't work out with Chandler and Curry. Who who else? We had Ron Mercer. For some reason, keep drafting Iowa State guys, right? Like, who was it? Marcus Pfizer was Iowa. Hoiberg was Iowa.
Iowa State,
Those guys
Iowa
are Iowa
State.
State. Pfizer too, yeah.
Iowa State. Yeah.
Tim Floyd,
Yeah.
right? I think
Tim Floyd.
Yeah.
Tim Floyd 2.0 was what's his name? Get the other guy. But yeah, so there were tons of guys that went in the system where it's like you gotta have. I think they're doing it right now. You know, Arturo, and then having the right coach and Billy Donovan, really basketball-minded people versus like, hey, we're gonna try this new thing. As you know, Phil Jackson was like he was kind of a like project too, right? He didn't really have too much experience in the pros. He was like out overseas doing like ayahuasca or something like that, and then coaching a team or something like that. I don't know, but it worked out. It worked out for them, right? The Zen master. So
yeah. I always felt bad about the Ron Artest, Brad Miller trade to Indiana, like pulling over like a Jalen Rose who's kind of over his own hill at the time, still a good scorer, but it was like just looking at all the potential Ron Artest had, you know, despite his, you know, just persona and everything else, like that was a backbreaker the second it happened. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah, I mean that was a interesting trade. The one that comes to mind for me is when for some reason the Bulls were like, we're gonna get younger. We want to get younger and more athletic, so we're trading for Dwayne Wade. Like, dude's like at the end of his career. That was a horrible trade. Like, it didn't work out for the Bulls, and I felt bad that, like, you know, he came back home and he had to just deal with whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. And he totally got in the head of Jimmy Butler at that time too. It was like Jimmy was looking up to role models, and it was like Rajon Rondo was actually doing the right thing and like being a great mentor for the young guys. And it just seemed like you had Dwayne on his other side, like, you know, I'm too good for this, or, you know, whatever it was. But I think that definitely rubbed off on Jimmy. And then it was like the next thing we know, he's like, I want out. And it's like, great. Like, so glad we brought D Wade here, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Well, it was Dwayne Wade that told Jimmy, like, you would fit right in Miami, I believe, right? So yeah, in a way, we brought him in and get him out, but I know, they wanted to do other things, I think, with Jimmy, and trade for picks and stuff, and it didn't work too well in Minnesota, but it's flourishing now, you know, with the Heat. So because they just have that dog mentality.
Yeah, they're not doing too well this year, record-wise. They're like 8-11 or something like that.
Yeah, they're still a little older, I think, but you know, hopefully though, I know they do have some younger players. They do have was it Max Strus, Mr. DePaul basketball now. So like we got one guy in the league. But I think age is a little bit catching up to them, you know, with Lowry and Jimmy's only getting older too, right? So
Bam's great.
Yeah, Bam, Tyler Heroes on occasion. Like, love his good streaks, but still
such a massive contract. Holy shit! That was a massive contract for 6 man. You know.
Yeah. Basically, they just recruit from Kentucky. I think that's their whole strategy, right? So Bulls recruit from Iowa State. Yeah, and then recruit from Kentucky. So
I'm surprised we didn't get Tyrese Halliburton. He was Iowa State, right?
Right.
I was really upset about that one for sure. Yeah.
One time to do it. Yeah. One time to draft somebody from Iowa State, right?
Who do we pick up instead? Oh, Patrick Miller.
Or
Pat Williams.
Yeah. We could have. I mean, hey,
they'd be way better off with me. I'm telling you, they'd be better off putting me at the 4. I'll shoot some threes. You know, to.
Yeah, you can definitely average what you know Pat Williams is averaging right now.
Sounds great, man. Sign me up.
Yeah. So, but I know. And I guess going back to food and everything, you know, we usually like to kind of end it off with regards to hearing more about your favorite food items, and you know, obviously barbecue, I think, is a staple in your heart and everything. It is winter. Curious to know, like, what are your holiday treats, holiday meals that you gravitate towards this time of year?
I just like the traditional stuff. So I'm not a huge fan of turkey, but I'll eat all the other things. I think turkey is just a little too dry. But all the other holiday things I'll eat. you know.
Pat's laughing. Yeah.
Sorry, not laughing at you, laughing with you. We had a full Thanksgiving review, and man, it's like, you know, it's like on a, like, if there's A to F, like I give it like a solid like C minus D plus. Like it's just not my thing. So just it's kind of like music to my ears.
Yeah, it's I think there's a reason why we only need like once a year. Like it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's had the excess of turkeys or something like that. Well, let's make a holiday out of it. I don't know.
It's non-perishable pilgrim food that just, you know, really belongs at an Aldi, and that's pretty much it. Like keep it there 364 days a year, pretty much.
Yeah, but you could brine it and then sous vide it and then like deep fry it, so it would be tender like a piece of chicken breast if you do it right. But it just takes a lot of time to do. I don't know if you want to have a 2-3 day process where you're like butchering your turkey, and then you're taking it, and then you're brining it, and then you're taking it out. You're going to sous vide it in like some duck fat or whatever the case may be. Then you're going to let it cool. Then you're going to get the deep fryer out, and then you're going to fry it. And by that time, you're like, shit, I'll just go to Boston Market and just get something similar.
I was gonna say, man, if we've got Charles Wong making the meal, like that's one thing. But like we've got some 50-year-olds, you know, 60-year-old ladies. You know, no offense to family or anything like that, but like some really don't know what they're doing in the kitchen. So
yeah, they're like, oh, I'm used to this dryness or whatever. It's like it's good. You know, you're like, there's a reason why there's gravy and cranberry sauce. You know, without that, you're like, what do I do now? How can I eat this?
Yeah, it's like putting ketchup on a hot dog type of thing, except you do it once a year, right? It's like why do we say that this is a good meal when like people only prep this meal once a year and they do it terribly? Like I never got the rationale for it. But
it's not the best, I would say. Christmas time comes around though, you got prime rib that people do, which is good. So we're thinking about smoking some prime rib and making like prime rib sandwiches. So things like that. So being in the industry now, it's you know, you're always thinking ahead. So like we're thinking about Christmas is already kind of here for me. So it's like Valentine's Day, Chinese New Year. What are we doing there? So, but we got a interesting collaboration coming up that we haven't broadcast yet. But I will do it exclusively here on the Ball and Breakfast podcast for all the people watching. This January, we're going to be teaming up with Honey Butter Fried Chicken. We're going to be doing a chicken fried brisket sandwich. So it's in the works, and it should be out in the beginning of the year sometime when everybody's on their diets.
Perfect time. Yeah, I know. Hey, Honey Butter Fried Chicken is my favorite, diet or not. Like that's what the gym's for, right? Like, yeah. And hey, you know what? Yeah, it's still cold, right? Beginning of the year and everything. So you still need some of that natural insulation. So I'm all for that. That sounds awesome, man. Congrats.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of work, a lot of bad food that I've made, and a lot of like head scratching, like what the hell was I thinking type deal. But you get some hits every so often, you know. It's like baseball. If you're right 30% of the time, you're a Hall of Famer, you know. So just think about that.
Cool. Where can people follow you? You know, you got a website, your IG, you want to give it out?
Yeah, website here, umamicue.com. Also IG at Umamicue. The swag has been so long, so we're going to try to get some more swag. And well, I think we're going to do some giveaways. We're going to do a 5K giveaway, not $5,000 because that's a lot of money, but 5,000 followers. Once we hit that plateau, we're going to do a 5K giveaway. So look out for that. It's going to be a while, but we started with 300 this year. We're at 3,800 right now, so we're climbing up the ranks.
We'll help you get you reach your goal there. So yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
That sounds awesome. Cool. All right. Well, I guess with all that, this is Wayne. This is Pat, our guest, Charles Wong. Thank you for being on here and everything. This is the Ball and Breakfast podcast.